it seems like it's kind of been quiet. And if you're not necessarily, working directly in this technology, that you may not know how and when this will impact you, and what you need to do as a small business to ensure that you're able to continue to study and understand, where your visitors are coming from and the impact it's having on your businesses. So again, welcome and thank you very much. I want to thank our series sponsor, Jake Mead, American Family. I always get this wrong because I want to say Insuring Your Dreams. So Jake, Sponsor Spotlight, thank you so much for sponsoring and being a part of it, American Family Insurance.
Correct. Thank you so much. Sorry, I make that even more difficult for you, Deanna, by saying I'm Mead Agency and Insuring Your Dreams and American Family. Anyways, life is better when you're protected under our roof, because our agency offers better protection, value, and peace of mind through quality insurance products offered by American Family Insurance. Access to my team of award-winning, trusted local insurance experts provide exceptional customer service. Contact my team today to discuss all your insurance needs at insuringyourdreams.com.
Thank you so much. And again, I want to thank the Mead Agency for not only your sponsorship of the Small Business Solutions series, but for your diamond level sponsorship of the Washington County Chamber. Really, truly appreciate it. So it's my pleasure this morning to introduce Daniel Gering, who is his career, 18 years career has been the Oregon tourism focused. For 15 years, he was the marketing technologist for Oregon's Mount Hood territory. Recently, he joined the team at the Washington County Visitor Association as their digital marketing manager. He is born and bred native Oregonian, can't imagine living anywhere else, and so absolutely sees all the beauty in Oregon, and then gets to talk about it in his work in tourism. So Daniel, thank you again for being a part of our program today and for your presentation.
Well, thank you so much. Everyone can hear me okay? All you have to do is just give me a thumbs up and everything's good. Yep. All right, excellent. As we all know, things in the digital world are never static, and they constantly are changing. And one of the things that has about to do a massive change coming up is Google Analytics. For all of those who have a website and are tracking because Google's free, oftentimes most of the people have it on there. And it's a great tool, but there are some major changes coming. And I think as a tourism person here at Washington County Visitor Association, it's really important that our partners understand what's going on to help them be better at what they do. So I'm going to go ahead and kick over to my little screen here, and we'll just start this. Trust me, this is not an overly technical explanation about what's going on, but I do want everyone to understand that if anytime you feel like, whoa, this is out of my hand, just use that hands up button and I can stop and we can ask whatever question you need to answer there. And then afterwards, I would probably recommend just saving most of your questions to the end, and more than likely you are one of 5 people who are going to have the same exact question, so that we can answer them all at one time. So starting off with the most important part, as soon as I can get my screen to slide over here, hold on. There we go. I'm Daniel Gering. I am the digital marketing manager for the Washington County Visitor Association. I've been involved in the tourism world for over 20 years as a technical person, mostly as the technologist for Clackamas County's tourism office. I have the pleasure now to be the digital marketing manager here at in Washington County. So it's I'm so excited about that. We are going to talk about what Google Analytics is and what it will become. And so we're going to just start off with just a little bit of back history on this. Basically, Google Analytics, by the way, is my little people screen in the way there? Let's put this down here somewhere. Sure. I don't know if you guys can see that or not, but I'm going to make sure that you can't. There we go. Google Analytics actually was formed in 2005 when they acquired another company. It was mainly a business website focused, but they discovered that pretty much every website in the world was able to start utilizing this tool to kind of keep an eye on what's going on. Google offered this feature because, one, they needed to understand the business world that they were working with, and they actually did this free so that people would get on board. They would be able to get conglomerate data. So everyone chipping in, if for your freeness, you get all of your information about what's going on with your website, but from their perspective, they're getting a perspective of what's going on in the digital world completely. And so we start off with universal analytics, which is kind of this basic tool that gave you how many visitors you came to your website, how long did they stay, how many pages did they visit, and then it just kind of gave an overview. And as the years have progressed, they've added a lot more features, but mostly they're answering some key questions. The first one is, where are your visitors coming from? So this is like a snapshot of ours where it's actually showing where your visitor has like where's the majority of your visitors coming from to your website, and that kind of helped you, especially if you were trying to decide on where you were going to target some of your marketing. And this would have been a way to at least get a sense of where people are coming from for that. And then how did they get there? This is what tools did they use to get to you? So like, for example, direct traffic is one of those where they've identified that they actually typed your URL in or saved as a bookmark. And organic traffic is one of those where they actually did a search for you and they came to you, and it could be Bing, it could be Yahoo, it could be Google, any one of those. A referral would have been someone where they were coming from a completely different website and they were able to come to your site from that. And then display was a form of advertising that's like a banner, oftentimes email. And then you get into your non-paid social, which is like what they call organic social, and then paid social, and then paid search. So those are the ways that people, how they get to you. And then what do they do after they get to you? And you would be able to get an idea of what pages were visited, how often or how long they stayed on that page. If they came in and bounced out, bouncing is one of those where they don't interact with the page. They don't even scroll. They come to the page. They're like, oh, this isn't what I'm looking for. And they're out. And so bouncing is one of those that has actually become kind of a way to think of things anymore, because people are making their pages more efficient, having the information at the very top. Maybe they're just looking for a phone number and they get the phone number and then they bounce out. So bouncing really isn't something we're going to be looking at in the future, and we'll talk about that in a little bit as we go into Google Analytics 4. First of all, since we started, there's 1.13 billion websites out there. Some of them are just your friendly kid building a little web page, to all the way to what we do with ours, a portal website, which is our job is then to get to our partners that are in the tourism world. Of course, there's Google, there's Amazon, where they're trying to sell product and they want to know how much their product is. Then also too, we went from these clunky mobile phones like this to these super smart, high sophisticated iPhones, or even Android. Don't let me it's any of that. Right now, there's 5.22 billion smartphone users throughout the world. Now, those smartphone users may only be people who have a phone that barely can touch the internet, all the way up to the ones who are using 5G access to get to all of their websites and all of their information that they're wanting on the internet. But with that and that massive amount of change, there has been an increase in understanding information privacy. That data that comes into you and is like you're trying really hard to protect your information. Your credit card information isn't what we're talking about. We're actually talking about the things like your name, your phone number, your email address, because people want that to then snag all that information and then try to sell you product, whether you want them to or not. So what's happened with this push for information privacy is that Google Analytics has come up and had to basically, and I think I missed a slide here, maybe, Yeah, I'm missing a slide here. I don't know what happened to it, but there have been laws that have occurred. GDPR is a good example of a law from the EU that if you do business with someone in Europe, they have the right to identify how you're tracking them and how you are, what kind of data you're collecting from them. And if they choose to, they can say, I don't want you to have our information. So they're going to cut us out of the picture. They're going to toss us aside and we're not going to be involved in that. And we have no recourse. There's a huge hefty fine that comes from that. Canada has implemented a law that's very similar. They were the first ones to implement privacy laws for like newsletters. So if you're sending a newsletter to Canada, the whole subscribe and unsubscribe process actually came off of the Castle laws that come from Canada. And the fact that they've now expanded these rules to make sure that it's a one-click unsubscribe so that they don't have to go through the whole rigmarole just to try to find a way to get rid of their email address from your email listings. So, the last year, if you are a retailer, you now are under the rules of if you do business with anyone in California, you have to follow the California Consumer Protection Act, which the CCPA rules are kind of modeled after the EU rules, where they have the right to delete your info. You have the right to ask for them to delete your information. It generally doesn't apply to anyone who's a nonprofit status. It doesn't apply to people who are not selling a product. But if you send an email, then you are pushing your product in front of them, and it is considered part of the CCPA rules. So those are the things that you have to make sure that you're careful about as you're going through this. And so Google Analytics had to change. They've been collecting a lot of data. I will tell you, it's a very big brother kind of thing where you're following people's behaviors, you're watching how they do it. Even though Google Analytics was an anonymous format, they had implemented rules years ago to help protect themselves from lawsuits, to make sure that this was some arbitrary letter number combination of identifiers. So user 1234 ABCD is the only information they have. But because of these new rules that have come into play, Google has responded in a way to help them also protect themselves from future problems related to these users. So they've actually stripped out information. It used to be that you had your analytics data for years and years and years after the fact. But the reality is that you now only have the data for 2 years, and then they start purging that data from the analytics systems. So that is something that's super important to make sure that as they moved forward, that they had a way to make sure that there was a great, easy process. So Google Analytics 4 came about because of that. Important thing is that the Google Analytics Universal, which we've all known from 2005, is actually end of life. And so on July 1st, Google Analytics Universal is going to stop collecting data. That means that at no time, that if you're still connected to the Universal, it's done. It's no longer to connect data. And within a year and a half, they're estimating that all of your data that you had previously on Google Analytics is going to also be gone as well. They are basically starting fresh. That is happening July 1st. And that's a super important date because as of June 30th at midnight, it is done. It's no longer going to collect data, and everything is going to be onto Google Analytics 4. So let's kind of look under the hood. Now in my day, I look at my car and it had an engine block, it had a carburetor, it had a thing that I could go and easily change my oil. It could easily do I could pretty much take care of my own car. But now you look at modern day cars and it's this mess that you're seeing in front of you where there's computer chips and all of these pieces. Well, Google Analytics 4 is touting the fact that they're actually easier to use, but at the same time, they're also more complex. And so we're going to switch over here and I'm going to actually show you Washington County's Google Analytics 4. see right here. So I had activated it as soon as I came on board in December. I immediately converted our Google Analytics to Google Analytics 4. We're collecting both side by side until July 1st, and then it's all going to get shut off. Google has responded to a lot of complaints about how, hey, we've got all of these features on Google Analytics that we still need to get resolved, but you're going to shut us off. What are we going to do? And they were like, well, some of our settings are actually going to be converted automatically over to universal. And we won't go into the details of how to convert yours, but I will tell you at the end about the process of how you can do it. And it's actually fairly easy. It's not ultra complex. The difference between Google Analytics is that they're touting on Google Analytics 4 is the easeability of reporting, so that it's making it easier for you to look at your data and actually understand what's going on. So for example, we have our users, we have conversions, which are whatever the designated thing that we want them to do. So like in the tourism world, we want them to click on our partner links. We want them to download a travel planner. We want them to look at or sign up for a newsletter. So those become conversions for us. We also want to look at our new users versus our old users. And if you look at that number, it's like, 4.5K here and it's 4.4 here, then you
Daniel,
can. Yes.
we're only seeing the Google Analytics 4 with the car screen.
This is, you see me moving my mouse around?
No, we just see the other. I don't think it switched over.
Oh my goodness.
That's all right.
Oh, that's good to know though. So let's see if I can change the screen sharing. Oh yeah, there it is. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and then I'll reshare to the new one, unless it lets me. Still being stubborn. How about now?
Much better. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, so this is inside. So this is what I was talking about with our users, our conversions, and then our new users right here. The differential between these two are the people who come back. So let's say, for example, there's 100 people that come back in this case. Users are defined as someone who's visited your website for the first time or any time after 30 days. So this is a person that has actually come back. A new user, I'm sorry, it's a new user, but a regular user is anyone who's also come back during that 30 days that the cookie still exists. And then, or if you delete your cookie, then you become a new user right off the bat. And then you have your events are also, things like scrolling, and we'll go over that in a second. And we also actually get real live data. So this is like how many users we got at the live moment at that time. And then if we scroll down here as well, we get some of our, this was also one of those things that was really difficult with universal analytics, is that we used to have no easy way to go back to the things that we went to on a regular basis. And so by doing this new recently accessed, it gave us a really fast way to jump to a screen if we wanted to. And then as we get down here a little bit further, we get some more detailed data from the last 30 days or 28 days or 90 days, and we can start seeing what that is. Notice that it says a preceding period. If this was set up and I had a year's worth of data, it would actually be showing the previous year's data. But because I don't have a year's worth of data in Google Analytics 4 yet, then it's only showing the previous month. And then it also shows you these events. Now, those events are the type of thing that a user does. Now, Google Analytics 4 is really trying to tout that they've made it easier for you to actually see what's going on from your user. So in this case, I've got how many page views I have, and that's just how many times that a page has been produced. So let's say, for example, I go and explore my website and I go to 5 different pages, then I'm going to get 5 page views. But yet I also have a session start, which is basically from the time that I start and the time that I actually exit our website is considered a session. That's a little different from page views, because page views is how many page views I do within that session. User engagement is a way to identify, for example, how the user actually is touching the screen, clicking, going to the next page, viewing a scroll. Let's say you have an image carousel at the top and they click the little arrow to scroll next to right and left on that. Our first visit is, again, anyone whose cookie is brand new. So they set that cookie for that one period of time. And then scrolling is like, again, if you're on a mobile phone, you're scrolling up and down. Even with a mouse, it's up and down. And then they also have one that's called click. Now, I had to make a custom one, but you really need to have someone who's actually got some programming experience to make customs. So that's a little bit, they do have a general one called click. And the general one called click is usually anyone who clicked on a link that goes to whatever, let's say a document or an outbound link. So in my case, it's important that I have an outbound link click, because I want to be able to say that when a visitor comes to our tourism website, that they're actually going to our tourism partners. And that's a super important. You can even track how many people actually start a form. So let's say, for example, our insurance friend that was just talking earlier, he has a form that he says, hey, contact me with all of your great information so I can get back to you. He would be able to actually know that someone's actually filled out the form, or at least started to fill out the form. It's an interesting thing to kind of think about, is if they start a form but they don't finish it. Maybe they started the form 99 times, but you only had let's say 65 submissions, then maybe you're asking too much from your form. And that's a question that you can then gain from these kind of things from the analytics. I'm going to take just a stop real quick here and just pop up my window, make sure, is there any questions so far about what's been going on? Everyone doing okay? Not too overly technical and scaring the crowd out of you all? Okay, good. I also want to make sure that you guys get good information at the same time. All right, then also looking at this next field over here, where we actually then have how many people are, or how they get to us. Again, a direct is where they type in the URL, paid search, paid other, organic search, display. You'll see a large portion of unassigned. These are people who are running what we call in incognito mode, where they're actually hiding their information. They don't want the cookie to track what their information is. As you can see, that number is a pretty high number, and is not uncommon for more and more people to do that, as they have gotten a little concerned about what privacy rules are coming up for them. And then also just another chart, and you get to decide what kind of charts you want to appear here. I'm going to go into these reports, which is the next section right here. And this is going to be a report snapshot. It's very similar to the screenshot that you just saw at the very beginning, although this one, again, you get to customize it to what you want it to be. Then the other one that you're going to look at is this one right here, where it is the your real time. Now, this is that big brother feeling that you suddenly get. It's like, oh, I got 14 users in the last 30 minutes. You get to see where they're coming from. This helps us in our case to say, hey, we've got a lot of local business. We got Seattle business. Then we're reaching our target market when we're talking about this radius that maybe is around this far. Maybe we do an ad campaign in Los Angeles, and then we can actually, during that period, actually see if we are getting visitation from that area as well. For me, mostly when I look at real-time information is that I'm making a change to the website, and I want to see if everyone is reacting to that. So it's an actual response. If you look at the life cycle, there's several reports in here. I'm only going to look at the overview reports because you really could spend hours and days about trying to understand all the different reports. But these are the key reports that come off of this. Acquisition, again, is what we talk about, where you're getting the actual detailed information about how many people are you getting from direct, how much are you getting from by session and by new users. So then if, for example, we have a print ad campaign or something that's going out at a time, we would know then we would see an uptick in direct traffic. Also, if you're running Google Ads, you're able to also see your Google ad information as it's occurring. In this case, I think it's only 7 days. But you're able to go into deeper details in any of these. What are our top pages? What are our top search terms from Google? Because we've tied it to our Google Search Console, we're actually able to get the data from Google about what are the words that people are typing in. And we're able to get some details to help us then shape our campaigns or make sure that we're reaching the people that we need to at the time. Engagement in the overview on this one is more detail about the interior of how they're visiting our site, how do they interact with us, or if we see the page views. We can also go into like what pages are being landed on, and then we can look at activity over time in the last 30 days, 70 days, or 7 days, and then 1 day. I actually watched this one for mostly not because of what my visitors are doing, but I also can spot check my website to make sure that if I had any downtime, I would actually know what's happening. Oh, I suddenly saw a major drop off because our web hosting company had an outage. And then I could go back to my web hosting company and say, hey, you know, I was down for 3 days. You need to give me a credit. And then you can get a little bit of cost cutting from that. That's my secret little thing there. And then monetization. Monetization, you won't see a lot of data on ours because we don't actually do anything like charge for your, let's say you sell a product, you'll be able to actually see your ad revenue versus your purchase revenue as long as you're doing tracking. So if you've got a website that is got a shopping cart in it and stuff, you're able to tie these two together and be able to say, not only am I looking at how many visitors are coming here, but then how many of those visitors are actually buying a product. Like I said, we don't have a product to sell, so we don't have any data in that one. And then the other one, let's see, is the advertising section. So if you have Google Ads, you can then tie this together. You're able to also tie your Facebook ads to this as well, to help find out how much your spend is, any insights. So for example, organic search appears in 61% of the conversion paths. This is that stuff that is now coming into the world, what we were talking about a little bit briefly at the very beginning of where we're talking about AI helping you be able to look at your data and then kind of give you an idea. So whenever you see an insights, that's the AI saying, hey, look, just a heads up, you've got a lot of stuff that's coming in and they're converting. So that's a good thing to do. And you can do some attribution studies as well. Attribution is a super complex process of being able to set up your models. So it's super important to, if you are crossing multiple, like you've got an app and you've got a website, that you're able to get all of this data together to be able to see how well everything is crossing cells and stuff. The other thing that you have as part of your feature, now notice we only have four line items here. The old analytics had 15 on the top level, and then there was a whole bunch of sub-level pages that you could look at for more detail. What they've done is taken away most of those reports, get into the high function ones, which as a small business owner, these reports, in my opinion, probably would provide you the most data that you would need anyhow. But if you needed some more detailed reports, you can create these custom reports such as a funnel. So if you wanted to see how your users are traveling through your website, you could do a path exploration. I generally am not a big fan of path explorations because then I say, oh my gosh, I've lost half of my traffic by page 3. And then I get all freaked out about how can I get them to stay on longer? And the reality is that they may find the information that they're looking for on page 1. So if you built your website with really good information and it's clear and concise, like your operation hours is on one page or on the footer of everything, they may just be looking just for that piece. And so path exploration is only if you've got content. So if you generate stories like a blog on a regular basis, articles that are informational, then path exploration is super important. I also have made, so all of these are custom reports. I will give you my best tip in the world, and that is if you need to create any of these GA4 reports that you want to do more of a path exploration, I highly recommend that you just hop onto YouTube, type in a path exploration for Google Analytics 4, and you should be able to find a step-by-step process on anything that you want. I'll show you, just if you pull this up, you're going to get overwhelmed by all of these elements that you're trying to see. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I want to know what their gender is or what country they're in or what device they're using. I just want to know, did they go from page A to page B to page C? How did I get that from this report? And you're like, oh, that's a huge struggle. It's actually, once you sit down and actually make one, it's not too bad, but it can be a little bit cumbersome. Like, for example, I made this outbound exploration one because, again, our goal as a tourism website is to make sure that our visitor is going to one of our partners. And so I made this report to be able to track what URLs were outbound clicked and on what page they were. And then I can see all of these, how many events happened that they actually clicked on that. So that is kind of a crash course on Google Analytics. There is so much information that you would need to go through to be able to gather the information. You could get lost in it. A lot of people who are not overly data junkie related will get intimidated by Google Analytics. But it is something that is important to a business owner to know that, one, you've got a website and that website is doing what it needs to be doing. And then also too is another important feature of that is then if I'm doing my job with a website, then what can I do to make it better? And that's what Google Analytics is about. It helps get you to that point to understand how can I make my business better. And sometimes it's a guess, you're taking guesses. You look at your data and you say, wow, I had a lot of visitors this day, but on this page, I only had 2 visitors. Well, maybe you made it too hard to get to that page. Maybe it was not an easy thing. And then what happens is I look at that kind of information and I turn that into a button. And suddenly the button solves all the problems, because just because I have a text link on my website doesn't mean that people even see it anymore. They get kind of lost, but they do see buttons. And we know this statistically says that if you have a button for something, you have a 53% chance of someone actually pushing said button. So it's super important to keep that in mind. So again, my name is Daniel Gering. This is my contact information. It's daniel@wcva.org. And that's my phone number in case you want to give me a call. Please be aware that I am specifically focused on the tourism side of things. So if it's a general retail question, I generally kind of get a little bit lost on that. I did work in the technical or in the shopping industry for a bit, but I'm really an expert mostly about tourism related kind of business, but I can answer some basic questions. I prefer if you send an email, then I can write up something real quick. But sometimes you just need to say, hey, Dan, I don't know what to do, so give me a call. So with that said, that's the end of my presentation. So does anyone have any questions?
No questions? Goodness.
Did I scare everybody?
Right.
Oh, you should be scared. It's
I
really
have
important. Yeah, go ahead, Jen.
Do we have to refresh our website content due to the new analytics format?
You do need to have, oh, I probably should get to that real quick. There is a plugin that you have to change. So you will need to update your content at the base of your footer. It's not automatic. So Google Analytics Universal has a UA status on it, and you'll need to go to a GA status on it. So you'll need to have your web developers go in and change that. If you're using a shopping site like Shopify or something like that, you'll need to go into your Shopify account, and after you have set up your Google Analytics 4 and started your transfer process, you can copy the code from that and add that to your website, and that will then start tracking the information. So you just replace what you're doing in, because Shopify, especially Shopify, has already been very proactive and already has a GA4 combination on it. So they're just looking for your account ID, and then you put that in and you're good to go. Real quick, the process for opening your Google Analytics account and transferring it over to GA4 is actually a fairly easy process initially, but I would go to YouTube and pull up the video. And I always say YouTube because, one, I've gone through Google training for many, many years, and I still find their site annoying. That they don't get cut to the chase. They have to give me the long encapsulated version before I ever get to I just need step 1, 2, 3, and 4. That's why a lot of people out there on YouTube have really done a great job with putting together, how do I transfer my account? So.
Daniel, we had a couple of chat questions. Beth,
okay.
I'm not sure whether yours got answered, but Beth is asking, can we talk a little bit about how to get started setting this up? Beth, did your question get answered?
I got to start. I have to go to YouTube apparently.
Yeah, let me pop over to my account real quick and I can see if I can find one for you. And so when I go to my overall, oops, I got something in my way. Hold on. And I'm gonna switch the screen so you can see what I'm looking at here. So let's say I'm going to go ahead and go to just it's analytics. And I'm typing this in all the way because otherwise it's remembering my bookmark. Let's see if that works. Okay, and then down here in the lower left-hand corner is an admin button. So you click on that admin button, and then you would change your account to something, let's say, for example, this one I don't use. Let's just use this one. And sorry, I'm thinking my way here. And then I click on this. It's going to give me a error saying, hey, look, just so you know, oops, gotta go back to the admin, sorry. You're going to go in here and it's going to say, hey, look, you've got Google Signals. You need to make sure to get that all resolved, or a big red button that says, hey, we turn it off at July 1st. Right here is the button that you would want to start the whole process, GA4 Setup Assistant. And then it will go through these processes of step by step on what you need to do. The only reason why I recommend doing the video from like YouTube is that there's some explanations that Google doesn't give you right up front. You have to go to an information page like this, learn more about GA4, and then you get this horrible long-winded version where they're talking to mostly tech people, not us marketers who tend to let other people do our tech work for us. So you're like, oh my gosh, this is so scary and intimidating. The YouTube guys are really good about helping you walk through those steps. So did that help?
It'll get me started. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Other questions or comments? And I guess, Daniel, the idea of what if you like haven't been really utilizing Google Analytics at all up to this point, and you're kind of like, well, this seems like good information. And so how important would you say it is for someone who's maybe in retail to get a better handle on sort of what the user experience is and how you can influence that experience by utilizing this data and information.
Yeah. I'm going to tell a story. It's not quite retail oriented, but it'll help you understand what we're talking about. Years ago, I was also, as part of my job with Clackamas County, I actually helped with the whole county's analytics stuff. And so one day I had a phone call from one of the county administrator assistants. She said, "Oh my gosh, I need to know how many visitors we had to this page. I'm sure that we've had thousands of visitors." And they set an expectation that was like really big. And I called her back and I said, "Hey, you had 4 people. 4,000 people. No, please understand, it was only 4 people that went to this page." And at that time, they didn't even have themselves screened out. So it was probably the 4 of their own employees that went to that page. It was super important to them. Taking that analogy that I just had right there and moving it into the retail world is you have a product that you are really trying to promote. And if you can't see how the visitor is actually even interacting with your website, then you suddenly are blinded by it. Now, admittedly, places like Shopify or WooCommerce, they give you a lot of information, but it's not the detailed information that you're getting from analytics. Analytics is free. And yes, there is a cost. Everyone worries about Big Brother, Google and stuff. But the reality is the return on cost is so much better. They're not getting credit card data. They're not getting privacy data. They're not getting anything. So really and truly, all you're doing is helping contribute to what they call the baseline and benchmark element. So one of the features that was in the old analytics is you could actually then benchmark against other businesses that are of similar value. So if you had $10,000 monthly retail sales, you could compare against $10,000 retail sales people and say, am I getting as many visitors as that? That tool has kind of gone away, and they're really kind of saying that the benchmark rule has kind of been a little bit clouded by the thousands and millions of websites, as we saw, so many. But it's super important to understand the user experience, and we make too many assumptions that we've got a product that people are really engaged with because we sold 50 of this product. You really need to understand, did you miss on 100 other people because you made it too hard for them to get to that product? Is it that they just couldn't find in their search, and that you used your analytics data to suddenly realize that my search is broken? It doesn't even pull up my product. Because when I do a search and I see that I had 1,000 people searching for my really great widget, they can't get to that widget because the search was broken. And suddenly that insight becomes almost an epiphany. I would also highly recommend that you also take analytic data also with a little bit of a grain of salt as well, because I live and breathe analytic data. I actually live and breathe all kinds of data. But you, as a small business owner, don't have a lot of time to sit there and dig through 100 pages worth of data to find out if you did it. Those high-level dashboards really are a good insight for what's going on. But if you start seeing trends and behaviors in your, like, for example, the product that you sold and it has a dollar value and you saw a decrease in that value, you didn't sell as many of those little cool widgets that you were trying to sell, the analytic data will actually help you understand why. Maybe you have an ad marketing campaign that reaches beyond Portland. Let's say you're trying to sell to Seattle, but you only got 5 visitors from Seattle, where you are like, oh, but I sold 5 widgets to Seattle. Well, maybe it's because you missed out on those many other people that you did that had come to your site. And so it's super important to actually see from the inside user perspective. And that's what I really is my biggest takeaway from all of this, is that we have to step aside from our own personal opinions of what it is and look at what the user is doing. We think we may have the best way to get to something. So, like, for example, we're doing a website redesign because we're looking at how our current site is structured is not maybe as beneficial to our partners as we want it to be. Maybe there's too many clicks. and we're looking at a drop off on click number 3. Well, if you don't have that chart that shows you all of those drop offs and where they're dropping off at, then you can't make that assumption because you don't know it. And then you're just missing out on all that opportunity.
Pastor Renee, I know you had a question in the chat about getting started. Do you feel like your question's been answered?
I think it sounds like I should go to YouTube and maybe catch up. Basically, I just need to know where the initial thing is with Google. Is this referring to a Google account, our Gmail, our website? I'm just trying to understand how it relates to my business.
I think what I'll do too is I will send a list of links of some of the YouTube people that I find pretty informational without over talking my head. You know, some of them really get really difficult. I'll send that to Deanna and then she can just kind of push that out to everyone who came, if that works.
That would be great. And I think, Pastor, the real the Google Analytics is really about your website. So your retail website, not so much about your Gmail account but it's really the analytics that are being generated by users coming to your website. And that a lot of folks have, live and breathe by those analytics. And now that Google is actually changing that, moving to a whole different, I don't know if it's a platform, but it's a different version.
Definitely a structure change.
And those folks that have been really relying upon the sort of old version of Google Analytics will, their data will not be collected in the same way after July 1st. And so this is really you've got a window of time now where you can sort of meander through that change, as opposed to June 30th, realizing, oh man, I am not ready for this. And I don't want to go a month's time without having, information being gathered about my website giving you a bit of time to do that research and figure out how do you go about making those changes and updates on your website so you're ready to roll on July 1st and not being sort of left behind or surprised by this change.
Thank you so very much.
You bet.
Also, one other little note is that there are other products out there. So Google Analytics is not the only analytic data thing. Adobe has an analytics program, but you pay a top dollar for that. That is tends to be very expensive. Mamodo, M-A-T-O-M-O, is another one that actually mirrors what today's version of analytics looks like. Well, actually, Universal Analytics from about 4 years ago. But they have almost identical layouts. So it actually, for those who do it, but it is a paid service, but it's like $200 a year. And it is, if you're so used to looking at something in a specific way, Mamodo might be a good option. And then there's several other other products out there, but I tend to steer a little bit away from some of them because they're asking for let's say $200 to start off with, but then they want to upsell you 4 other products as they're doing it. And it gets kind of hairy at that stage.
Other questions, comments from our audience? Well, I have a couple of questions. One is just the, the number of people that you showed were like opting out, like, not accepting the cookies when you go to the websites. And so you're not collecting data on someone who doesn't accept. Is that correct?
That is correct. The old server-side analytics programs used to collect whoever touched your website, but those went out of service years ago. Web Stats is one where they still are around, but they still refer to hits and those, that tends to get a little bit it doesn't translate well to the rest of the marketing world.
And so I'm wondering, is that going to become, as everybody gets more concerned about their privacy and, getting, scammed and that sort of thing, is that going to become sort of a problem in the future of where folks you have more and more people opting out of providing that information, and that it becomes kind of the analytics overall become unreliable because of the lack of the ability to collect that data?
I always say any data is better than no data. So if I get cut out, which Google Analytics 4 has cut out some people out of the thing because they've opted out. That actually means that I'm not getting the information. Anyone who has like a Gmail account, when you sign your terms of agreement, have already opted into it. So your data is already being collected as part of that agreement for any of the Google products. But you still are getting data, because before you're making decisions based on no data. And if you're thinking about how users are using it, you could take a survey and say, hey, what did you think of our website, versus here's the people that are actually coming and going, and they'll never fill out a survey. Number two is, I think when we look at how people are collecting data today, it was not even 8 years ago, everyone, that mobile devices weren't really that big of a deal. We were only looking at maybe 30% of people using mobile devices like 10 years ago. And now in our website alone is 72% are using mobile devices. We don't have a clue about how AI is going to change the face of search and how they get the data when they answer those questions. Bing has been exceptionally transparent under ChatGPT because they're showing the sites that have been providing their information at the bottom. And it's one of the biggest arguments that Bard has had, is that they're not showing that information. They're not showing where they got the referral information for answering the question. This already leads to that conversation, Deanna, about AI and where things are going. And I think that search is going to change, that if you don't have the answer to the question on your website, you're not going to be included in AI, and you won't know then how analytics is going to be affected by that. It could be that at some point, Bing and Google are actually going to say, you have this many searches that we could call as an assist, like a basketball term, when you pass the ball to someone and they score. We may get some kind of terminology and tracking information that's going to come from that. But for right now, we just take the data that we got and we run with it.
Well, thank you, Daniel. I remember the first time that I got an email that was from a shopping site that said you left something in your cart, and how freaked out I was. I'm like, how do they know that? And so it's like, now that's just sort of standard operating procedure. But yeah, that was the moment which I'm like, everybody's watching me. Okay. My final question is that landing pages, where you hit a website and all of a sudden it comes up and asks you to to sign up for something, give your email address. How effective are those? And does that become sort of a turnoff where people are like, I'm not going to do that yet? Or is it someplace where people are like, yeah, I'll give you my email address?
We're still seeing the email marketing, and we're getting information from Campaign Monitor and MailChimp that's saying that campaign or follow-up marketing. So for example, that fear that you put something in a shopping cart and then you get a reminder email. Shopify really actually found that they actually make a lot of closing deals because of that email. And so email marketing is still important. I think though, what's happening with and this is just my own personal viewpoint on this one, is that we've been overwhelmed with marketing. If you go to your Facebook page now, as just an informational user, I'm like, I want to see what's going on with my family. I have to sift through hundreds of ads now, or those little trigger sites like Blogspots and stuff that trying to get you to go to their article. And then I finally find my family in there. And the same thing's happening in email, where in like Gmail, you actually have a promotions folder, and I'm looking at my promotions folder going, so I think you're going to see a mix of a rebellion that's going to go against that model, and that the Amazon Alexa philosophy of, well, if I mention the word widget, then suddenly widget ads appear on all of my Facebook ads and stuff. I think that as these data privacy rules come into play, you're going to see fewer and fewer of those. Actually, I think you're going to see a decrease, and I think that you're going to start seeing emails that are more pertinent to you rather than just being thrown stuff.
Good to know. Any final questions for Daniel, folks? Thank you so much, Daniel, for bringing this to our attention and for providing this really valuable information. Really, truly appreciate it. Want to thank Jake Mead, Mead and Associates, Living Your Dreams, American Family Insurance for sponsoring the Small Business Solutions Series workshops. Our next one is scheduled for June 21st, and that is our next edition of Eavesdrop, which we will be having a conversation with Jelana Canfield with Jelana's Bake Shop. So from 10 to 11, don't miss that. And thank you all very much for your day. Have a great day. Appreciate you taking the time.
Take care, everyone.
Thank you.